Hello and welcome to episode 132 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is February 28th, 2022. Today I'm wearing my Revontuli shawl. I think this was the first pattern that I sort of saw everywhere on the internet once it came out. And it seemed that everybody was knitting it except me. I was really late to the party and I only knit this. It's quite a few years ago, but it felt like everybody had already knit it. I knit mine in 2014 and I knit it between the 6th and the 12th of August. So I think I always knit several projects at the same time, but sometimes I would focus on one thing and just finish it. And this is something that I must have done with that one. Otherwise, I wouldn't have finished it within a week. The yarn is Lang yarns. It's one of their beautiful rainbow colors. I loved the color when I first saw it. I really like it in this pattern. I like this chevron pattern. And to me, it looks a bit like a mix between a rainbow and a star, even though it's only half a star, but still. I really like the pattern a lot and I like the shawl. And I'm wearing it together with my very colourful cardigan that I knit in 2016. And I think I knit that fairly quickly. It took me forever to get it started. I think I had the yarn lying around several years before I actually started knitting, and then I just finish it very quickly. It's an 8mm needle, so it's quick work. I'll show you how long the jacket is. So this is the whole thing in all its beauty. It's the Alafaslopi and the Letlopi knit together, and that's what the pattern called for. And I bought the yarn specifically for this pattern. And the interesting thing about this pattern is that the black yarn, this blue and this red, that's a thick yarn. I can never remember which of the two is the thick one, the Letlopi or the Alafaslopi, but the other one is half as thick. So if you use two strands of the thin yarn, you get the same thickness as with the thick yarn. So the black, this blue and the one red, they are just single colors, and whenever I doubled the yarn, I used two different colors. So that's what makes the jacket even more colorful than just using many colors. So you can see it's a red and orange here, and then this is a dark and a light green, and then it's the light green with the yellow, and then it's the yellow with the orange, and then it goes into the red. But because of all these mixing of the thin yarn, you get so many different colors and you sort of get a bit of a gradient going. And I really enjoyed knitting it. I couldn't decide on a color for the buttons, so I used different color buttons. Really like that about the jacket as well. This yarn is not a soft against your skin yarn. I can still wear it against my skin because I'm not sensitive at all with my skin. But it's a cardigan, it's a jacket, so I usually wear it on top of something else anyway. And it's the first steeked project I ever did. So I knit this in the round, so it's easier to knit. You always look on the right side of your work, and then once you finish knitting, you cut it open, and then you fold sort of the cut edge inside, and then I crocheted the button band. It's a bit difficult to see because I crocheted it in black, but it's a very simple thing to do, and this is the perfect yarn for it because it's quite rustic. It's not machine washable, so even though I did do the crochet thing with I crocheted along the steek to make sure it doesn't fall apart, but even if I hadn't done it, it probably wouldn't have fallen apart because of the yarn. So that's that colourful, warm jacket and my rainbowy shawl, Rainbow Revontuli shawl. That's what I'm wearing today. And then on to finished objects. I have one finished object for today and 2 new cast-ons, by the way. But I think that's okay because I still had sort of a cast-on from last week. Yeah, but I'll stick to the rainbow theme and the colorful theme. And I finished my Quadra Cowl, this beautiful, fantastic, genius pattern by Martina Behm. And the first half of my Quadra Cowl I knit with this rainbowy opal yarn from the subscription, from the abo. And then the second half I used the Aniva Royal, I think, is the color. This is one of the rainbow colors by Wolldackel, a German hand dyer. And this is what the whole thing looks together. And as you can see, it's open here, so you can wear it like this, and you can either show this color or you can show that color. This is not quite straight, so if you wear it like this, you can sort of pull it down a bit, and then you can open your jacket or whatever. You can also fold it down and wear it like this, then it would show more of both colors. And then that's one of the very interesting things about this, because this is a double layer throughout, and that means I can move it. So if I sort of move it halfway through, what happens is that I get this center bit of the square into the middle of my loop, and now you can see that it's sort of pointing upwards, it's not lying flat. And I can either just show this color, or I can show where the 2 colors meet. And then if I turn the whole thing in itself, I get the center of the other color. I could wear it like this, or I could show where those colors meet. And the thing is that right now, this is, as I said, it's not lying flat. It has this, this tip. And if I fold it the way I had it before, you can see it's not really a square, even though it's called Quadra Cowl, and Quadra is short for Quadrat, which is the German word for square. So it's not perfectly square, it's more like a parallelogram. Is that how you say it? And what I'm going to do is, I haven't washed this yet, but I want to wash it and then I want to block it. And I want to see if I can block it into a square, so that if I wear it like this, so that would lay flat. This is almost flat, but you can see that the, especially those edges are not straight. And especially this square, if I fold it to the outside, you can see this is not flat at all. So this is sticking up quite a bit. And I want to see if I can block it so that it lies flat. And then the whole loop should be square. Then it should really be a square cowl, as the name suggests. And then also this side would probably look a bit more straight and a bit more flat as well, because right now these sides want to come out like this, and this is not really lying flat. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. And then next week I'll show you what this looks like after it's been washed and blocked. That's all the finished objects I have for today. Then on to works in progress. And I start off with the socks as usual, and I continued knitting on my 24-day socks by by Emma from the Potter and Bloom podcast. So she gave me this pattern, and she wanted to see what it looks like knit with opal yarn, and that's what I did. And I've been trying several things. So for this bit, I used 5 different leftover yarns by opal. And I used a different skein of yarn for each stripe, and then realized it doesn't really make sense because it looks like it's one colorful yarn. So for the foot, I switched to 1 yarn, and this is the one that I used. That was one of the 5 original skeins that I used up here, and for down here, I only used this, and I think it looks really nice. So if you have a really colorful yarn, all you need is a colorful yarn and 1 main color. and you can knit this pattern and have a fantastic sock. If you have hand-dyed yarns in distinct different colors, or if you have an advent calendar, which this was originally designed for, then of course it makes sense to use different skeins. But if you have a yarn like this, one's enough. Now for the second sock, I wanted to use not different colors. I wanted to use the same colors I used in the cuff here, but I didn't want to use the same skein like here. So what I did is I used this skein, which is one of the 5 that were up here. But as this ball of yarn does not include any green, I decided to use this one as well. So those were 3 of the skeins that I used for the original 5 that were up here. But those 2 were the most colorful of these skeins. So I decided to use that for one sock, and I'm using this plus this for the second. So the idea was to use the green for every 5th stripe, or the first of every 5. So I used it up here. Now I did 4 stripes with the colorful one. Now I'm going to add another green stripe, and then so on and so forth. And then the socks will probably be quite different, but you can tell that they belong together, so that's not a problem at all. Yeah, I only managed a few stripes, but still I got it going, and I can just keep knitting. Then the next sock are the grey lemonade socks for my sister. And there also I had finished one of the socks. I had started the second sock, and I finished the heel and started the pattern. And as you can see, the second sock has the pattern on the other side. So you can either wear them with the lace pattern on the outside or on the inside, but they're not the same. They're mirror image, aren't they? Yeah. And there's one thing I forgot to tell you about the first sock, which is, it's a bit embarrassing maybe, but anyway, the thing is, I knit the heel with the wrong number of stitches. And the reason for this is, and I did not do that with the second one. So I knit this one correctly, and I did not fix this one. I checked with my sister. She said it doesn't matter. She doesn't mind. As long as she can wear them, it's okay for her. I don't think you can see anything. But the thing is, when I started knitting this sock, I was basically knitting 15 stitches per needle. I'm using double pointed needles. So I'm knitting with 60 stitches, and I'm knitting a 2x2 rib. So if you do 15 stitches per needle with a 2x2 rib, every needle will start differently. One will start with knit 2, and it will end on purl 1. So the next needle starts off with purl 1, and then I think it ends with knit 2. So the next needle starts with purl 2, and then the last needle starts with knit 1, something like that. Sometimes I'm not in the mood for checking every needle, so what I did is I rearranged the stitches to have 3 needles with 12 stitches and 1 needle with 16 stitches. And I forgot about that when I started the heel. So I ended up knitting the heel over, I think I did 28 stitches. Or was it 24? I hope it was 28, otherwise it'd be really small. I didn't even check. And the thing is, I only noticed when I did the decreases for the gusset, and I wanted to see how many more decreases I needed to do, and that's when I started checking the number of stitches I had, and that's when I realized I didn't have 15 stitches on my needle. So I rearranged them. I made sure it was 15 stitches on every needle to knit the foot, but it was quite a mix-up. But as I said, my sister doesn't mind. She said I can keep knitting as long as she can wear them. She's fine. So I finished the sock, but with the second sock, I made sure to not rearrange the stitches on the needle. So I did the 2x2 rib with 15 stitches per needle, so I had to concentrate how the needle started off, but it worked out fine. Did the same heel with a slightly different number of stitches, but yeah, I think it's rather obvious that this has less stitches than this one, but that's okay. As I said, my sister doesn't mind. I hope she can wear them. If she can't, I'm going to knit a third sock. I'm not going to fix the first one. I'm going to knit a third sock. I'm knitting the alpaca sock yarn by Hansa Farm. Love knitting it. It's so soft. It's so beautiful. Can't wait to finish my socks so I can wear them. And I'm looking forward to giving these to my sister so she can test the yarn and the socks and wear them. Yeah, so that's the socks that you already know. And I cast on another sock as I had planned for quite some while. And I started knitting another pair of cat socks. If you've watched my videos for a longer time, you may have seen the cat socks that I knitted for my brother-in-law and for one of my nephews. And I always meant to knit another pair for the other nephew and somehow forgot about it. But I remembered and now I cast them on. I'm using this blue-grey colour out of the Africa series by Opal. It's the latest series that they came out with. The next series should come maybe this week or next week, we'll see. But so I'm using this colour, and this is going to be a really simple sock. I did a 2x2 rib cuff using my mini chiaogoo needle size 2.75 millimeters. And after the ribbing, I will just knit stockinette. I'll do my either a fish lips kiss heel or a short row heel. I think it's German short row heel. It's the English name. In German, we have different names for it. It's quite funny. Anyway, I'll just do a short row heel, and then half the foot will be knit with this color and the other half will be knit in black. And then I will embroider the cat's ears and the eyes and nose and some whiskers, and then those will be cat socks. Yeah, so this is going to be a simple sock that I can just knit without thinking a lot, and that should be fine as I change once I start knitting the Sock Madness socks. Today's the last day you can sign up for the Sock Madness, and then tomorrow the whole thing starts. I think last year it didn't actually start on the 1st because there were organizational things to be done, but at some point within this week, I think we should get the information which material we're going to need for the qualification socks, and then at some point the pattern will come, and then I'll be knitting a pair of socks and ignoring all the other projects for a while. Yeah, we'll see about that. Okay, so that's all the socks. Then I have one little project with sock yarn. That's the hat I'm knitting. So this has grown a bit, but nothing much changed. So I changed the needle size from the 3.5 to the 4 millimeter needle. It's not very obvious, but I'm happier with the feel of it. And I want the hat to have a very generous folded brim, which means I will have to knit quite a bit more before I start doing the decreases. Yeah, this is just a very simple hat. I'm not using a pattern. I'm just knitting 104 stitches, and I will just do some very simple decreases in the crown. This is sock yarn with some silk in it, so I hope it's going to be a really nice and soft but also warm hat for either myself or my brother or somebody else. We'll see who it fits. Yeah, so that's it. Then on to all the clothes I'm knitting at the moment. And I'll start off with the party cardie, with my rainbow cardigan that hasn't got a rainbow yet. So this is this really black jacket that I'm knitting. It will get a very colourful collar and fronts once I finish the jacket, and I have started knitting the first sleeve. It's really difficult to show on screen, but I think if I hold it like this, you can see it. Using another chiaogoo mini circular needle. It's a 4 millimeter needle knitting the whole jacket on 4mm needles, and I haven't done a lot yet, but I've picked up the stitches under the arm. I've just started knitting. I think the pattern calls for so many rows of knitting before you start the decreases, but then it only has a few decreases because the sleeve is supposed to be like a 3/4 sleeve. I want to do that differently. I will probably knit until the elbow again before I start the decreases because it's not a very wide sleeve, and then I will probably do some more decreases than asked for because I would like to have a long sleeve, but I will probably not finish the sleeve because I would really like to have a colorful cuff on the sleeve to go with the front edge of the cardigan. So that's what I'm thinking. So I will probably knit the sleeve until only a few centimeters are needed, and then I will put the stitches on hold, knit the second sleeve, finish the front and back, and then once I finish the edging in the front, I will see how much yarn I have left, and then I will finish the sleeve. If I don't have enough yarn left, I can still put a black cuff on. Otherwise, I want to use the colors from the fronts on the edge of the sleeve. That's the plan for now. But first, a lot more black knitting to do. Yeah, speaking about black, the next one's not the black one. The next pullover I started was the Raglano. This is the Opal sock yarn 6-ply or DK weight or whatever in this beautiful color. And I continued knitting the front and back. So I haven't done a lot. This is where I added in the new ball right there. So it's just grown a little bit. But yeah, I have quite a bit of yarn to use up. I am hoping that this is a little bit oversized, so it's a loose pullover. So I don't want it to be short. I probably don't want it too long. It's not supposed to be a dress, but I wanted a fairly long pullover. So yeah, this is another project that I will knit and try on and knit and try on. The next pullover, the Noro Pappus pullover, has already passed the stage of knitting and trying on because I started knitting it's not really the ribbing, but the edging or the edge or whatever. But first, I'll show you the Noro yarn because the ball always looks different. So today we have a bit of the light grey left, brown, black, the teal color, and then the beginning of the red. It starts off with a darker red and then we'll have the light red. I'm not sure I'm going to use the red at all, and I'll show you why. Oh, the other yarn is Mohair Silk by Hansa Farm, and I decided that the length was good, long enough to start the edge. So I'm doing a garter stitch edge because the pattern calls for a 2x2 rib, but there's no other ribbing in the pullover, so that was one of the reasons I didn't want to do it. And the other was, even with the mohair, I was a bit worried that the 2x2 rib might be pulling in slightly. And as the pullover is fairly long, it's almost like a tunic, I didn't want the edge to pull in. So I decided to do a garter rib, a garter stitch edge, because it sort of looks like the reverse stockinette that I have at the end of my sleeves. So I thought the reverse stockinette and the garter stitch, they sort of look similar, and that should look good, I hope. And because I didn't want to purl stitches, and because it's fairly long, I decided to do a split hem, but I didn't split it on both sides. So there will be one side that's open and the other is going to be closed. So it's just a little bit asymmetric. And yeah, so all I have to do is knit and knit and knit some more rows, and then at some point decide it's long enough, and that's that. Then this will be finished. Can't wait for it. Can't wait to wear it. I'm really, really happy and excited. And this is so soft. This yarn is quite nice. It's not like completely soft. It's maybe a bit too thin for that, but the mohair is so soft, and because it's knit at such a loose gauge, you can even look through it even though it's 2 layers, and that just makes it, the mohair and the loose gauge make it so soft and really light. So the whole thing will weigh less than 200 grams because this was 100 gram and I'm not going to use it up. And then the mohair has the same yardage as this. So if I use less than 100 gram of this, I will use less than 100 gram of mohair. So yeah, it's a really light pullover and love it already. So that's that. And then I continued knitting on the mealy vest that I started because a friend of mine has knit one, and she's completely finished with the knitting and the sewing and everything. She even added the pockets. The only thing that's missing with hers is some sort of closure, and she probably wants to do a zipper, which I will not do. But let me show you what I've done. I decided it is long enough, and I added the ribbing with the black alpaca yarn. So this is opal sock yarn in a grey-white mix, held together with light grey brushed alpaca, and now I've used the same opal yarn but the black brushed alpaca. So it is a really stark contrast, but I like it. And yeah, this is the length that I went for. And I think it's quite interesting that with this, the yarn got so much lighter because of the light grey alpaca yarn, and now it gets a lot darker, but you can still see the light parts in the sock yarn. So I really like the effect that you get. And after I finished the ribbing down here, I knit the ribbing in the armholes. The pattern calls for a fairly small bit of ribbing, and I like that, so that's what I did. So the next thing that I'm going to do is knit the collar, and that's a folded one. So you start on one side, fold it over, and then sew it in. And I was thinking of doing that in 2 colors, and I think originally I was thinking of doing the light inside and the dark outside, but now I've changed my mind, and I will probably do the light on the outside of the collar, so when I fold it up it will sort of visibly go with the rest of the vest, and then when I fold it down you can see the inside, the dark inside, and then that will go together with a button band that I'm going to add in the end, and that will also use the black brushed alpaca. So that's the plan with that. As you can see, there's no yarn attached to it at the moment because I stopped knitting after I finished the ribbing in the armholes, and so the next step is going to be to pick up the stitches for the collar. Yeah, so that's really exciting. All my clothes are quickly growing, except for the cardi, the party cardi. That's growing really slowly, but patience. It will get there at some point. Then on to crochet. I continued crocheting on those squares, and as you can see they grew quite a bit. Both of these squares only need another 2 rounds in the first color, in the last color, so this will get 2 rounds of white and this will get 2 rounds of dark blue, yep, that's it. And the other 3 squares that I had been working on are completely finished, and I started sewing things together. So these are 3 of the 3 first squares that I crocheted, and then the 3 that I started together with these 2. I finished those squares and I sewed them together just very easily, just nothing fancy. But this is what the thing is going to look like in the end. It's going to be 3 squares wide and it's going to be 5 squares long. So I'm going to add like these 2 and then another one, and then the same here. So that means I need another 7 squares. So as soon as I finished crocheting these, I will start the other 7 all at the same time, the way I did with these 5. So I'll do 7 of the centers, and then I'll let them all grow at the same speed, so to say. Yeah, so I still love the pattern. I still think it looks fantastic, and I can't wait to finish it and to put it into my kitchen. And the second new cast on that I promised is another crochet pattern. And you may remember that I showed you this little gauge swatch that I did. And this was less to measure the gauge, but it was more to learn the technique. Because this was crochet using the locked filet mesh technique or interlocking crochet. I'd never done that before, so I needed a bit of practice. This is the front, this is the back. And the reason this is not a gauge swatch is, even though this is the same yarn that I'm using for my project, I think I used a 4mm needle to do this, and I decided to use a 4.5mm needle for the blanket I have started, because that's the size needle I used for the other crochet blanket I did with the same yarn. So yeah, I didn't use that for the gauge, but just to learn the technique. I'm going to link this pattern on the project page of the blanket, so in case you want to learn the technique, you can check out the designer Ashley Brotzel, and she has a video tutorial to go with this pattern, so you can learn how to do that. And the project that I learned all that for is called Stomp, and it's a black blanket with a dinosaur on it. And you may remember that either last year or the year before, I crocheted a blanket with dinosaurs on it for one of my cousin's sons when he started school. And those were little triceratops heads. And now the cousin of that boy is going to start school this year. And I was looking for another crochet blanket with dinosaurs, or with a dinosaur. And I found this fantastic pattern called Stomp, and it shows a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I am using Opal sock yarn, 6-ply or whatever, in this color. So this is going to be the background color, supposed to look a bit like grass or forest or flowers or whatever. And this is the color I'm going to use for the dinosaur. The original pattern, I think, uses a dark brown, but I don't have that yarn in a dark brown. And I did not want to use black or dark gray for a child, so I thought the blue goes nicely with this green. There's some light blue in the yarn, so I thought that's a good combination, and I hope he's going to like it. And this is what the blanket looks like so far. I think this is the first crochet blanket I'm working all in one piece. All my other crochet blankets have been crocheted out of pieces and then put together. So this is the first time I'm going to crochet a blanket all in one. I've knit blankets that way before, but not crocheted. So, as I told you, this is this interlocking crochet or locked mesh filet. So, as you can see, I'm basically crocheting two filet blankets. So with filet crochet, you usually have either open spaces or closed spaces. But with this technique, you only have open spaces. And this is the one blanket and this is the other blanket. And all I ever do is I crochet with one color at a time. And when I use the green yarn, I always do a double crochet and a chain. And I always crochet into the green blanket. And when I use the blue, I do the same. It's one double crochet, one chain, and I crochet into the blue. And the pattern comes from sometimes interlocking those two fabrics. So when you look here, you can see that the blue has gone from behind to the front of the blanket, and here it's going back behind the blanket, and the green comes to the foreground again. So just by switching those two colors front and back, and while doing that, those two blankets get interlocked into each other. That's how you create the pattern. And this is going to be like a bit of grass. And then the next bit of the pattern is this long thing here. This is the first foot of my Tyrannosaurus. And this little bit here, we're not quite sure. It could be a little bit of grass, or it could be like a footstep of a dinosaur. So I'm not quite sure what it's supposed to be, but it looks nice. If you want to see what the blanket is supposed to look like, you can check my project page. I link to the original pattern, or you just look for the pattern Stomp, and you're going to find this blanket, and you can have a look what it looks like. Yeah, on the edge of the blanket, they always get interlocked, so yeah, it doesn't fall apart here. And it was really, really interesting to crochet this. I really enjoyed the technique. I think the pattern is fantastic, and it was really difficult to put it down because I just wanted to do one more row and one more row, and I just, yeah, couldn't wait for this change to happen, and I'm really looking forward to continuing crocheting on that. So that was the second new cast on. That's my second crochet project at the moment. That brings me to our knit along. My Wolkig is very, very slowly growing bit by bit. This is the leftover yarn. I weighed it. It's 17 grams, which means I'm back to knitting 3 grams a week. At that rate, we will enjoy this knit along for another few weeks. But as I always say, I still enjoy the knitting. It is actually growing. This ball is actually getting smaller very slowly. It's the wonderful Angora yarn by Seidenhase. Yeah, Wolkig, another pattern by Martina Behm. It's a free pattern, so please feel free to join in, knit your own Wolkig, and join the fun. Yeah, that's everything I wanted to show you today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!